Okay, rock and roll. So Web 250, this is week 2, module 2. We're going to have to figure out how we call these things, but I want to do a quick survey of what we did last week. Remember we had yetis.us, let me show you that, and we FTP'd some files up there, went to Web 250, it was called first page PHP, and we got some kind of page, we did a loop. Now, those of you who turned in your homework, looking good with FizzBuzz. There's probably some of you who are intimidated, haven't turned it in. You need to let us know that you need some help. So what we do with FizzBuzz, which you've probably sorted out, is you actually are doing a loop, but you're doing an if statement inside that. And if you Google it, there's actually a lot of different solutions for FizzBuzz. One of them is that you can do you check for 15 because 15 is both 3 and 5. You can actually put conditionals, you can put ternary operators and things like that. I'm going off the assumption you already have some programming background. This is not an intro to programming. If you need the basics for programming, you need to go hunker down on that or ask some questions. So the next step, you've basically seen initial PHP code. Let me go ahead and open up Notepad++ so I can get back to whatever code I had before on this. And I had asked you to style it and do some other things. So here was our basic page. Let's see if I can shrink that down. And we did a loop here, 1 to 100, so on and so forth. It probably makes sense to incorporate a style sheet or something like that for now, but you all know how to do that. I'm not going to worry about it. Next step, I'm going to go ahead and, well, what I want you to do is master forms. And in order to master forms, there's a couple different things we're going to have to keep track of. Typically, I tell people go to W3 Schools, and I'll show you where that is here. W3 Schools, and we go to PHP, and there's a thing here over on the side called PHP Forms. And where are they? They're right up here, right? So starting here, PHP Forms. Now granted, it would be a good idea to go through all these other tutorials. They're fairly short, and I'm going to just leave that to you to go through. I will address those here and there, but I'm not going to go systematically through because it's just repeating what you can do. You can also go to lynda.com, and just by way of example, if I do a search on PHP tutorials, I get 71 million results. First in W3 Schools, here's PHP, 40 plus invaluable, so on and so forth. So there's no shortage of learning material out there. I'm just here to give you some context and some framework. So we're going to go to this, and what we want to do is a form. And I'll reference this example. Let me go ahead and reducify my window so it fits here a little bit better so you can see what's going on. And typically, here was the little PHP, so I'll click on PHP Forms, and we have here just a standard form. Now you can copy and paste this directly. I'm going to do that just as an example, and then we'll talk a little bit about it. I'm copying the form right in my HTML. Copy, switch over to Notepad++, and note that it's PHP and it is not HTML, so that I have to decide whether I want to be in the PHP like this is, or I want to be in the HTML like it is now. So I'm going to go right to where my body tag opens, come in here, and I'm going to paste this form. And a couple things about a form. Notice it has an action attribute value pair, so we have the action and then the value is welcome.php. In other words, welcome.php is the page that's going to do the action. At the moment, this page doesn't exist, so you can imagine what happens when we run it. The method is post, and the choices for methods are post or get. I'm going to go ahead and change that to, well, I'll leave it for now just so we can go with the example. And then we have two fields, one called name and one called age. They're both input. The attribute value pair tells you that it's the text, and the name is essentially a variable that identifies what's actually going to go in that field. So fname is an unfortunate variable name I don't particularly like, but we're going to leave it as is for now. I'm going to go ahead and save this. I do need to upload it. And come on, where did my uploading tool go? SFTP. I'm going to pause this while I connect to my server and all that, so you don't have to waste your time with that. So now I've got FTP set up. Notice I'm in my desktop, and I'm in my Web 250 working here. And up on the right, I'm on the server, yetis.us, Web 250, and there's the same page. Here's the new copy. Here's the copy up on the server. So make sure I've saved my work. I can look here in Notepad++ and see if indeed I saved it. I did, because it's grayed out. I go to WinSCP, drag that over, copy it. You can check the times. Remember, we might have a difference between Pacific and Eastern, but that was several days ago, so I say yes. Now I go back to the website, and I'm going to refresh that, and notice what happens. Let me move this down. What happens is we now have this form, and it says name and age. This other stuff is from before, but we're interested in this name and the age. So just for kicks, without doing anything else, I'm going to hit submit. And what I get is an error. And the reason I get this error is I'll move the website down, and you can see that it's looking for a welcome.php. And there is no such page on the server. So now would be a good time to add it. So I'm going to go to Notepad++. I'm going to actually copy the basic. I'll copy all of this, Control C. I'll make a new page, Control V. So now I have a duplicate. And I want to save this. It was called welcome.php. Now I'll get my color coding. And I don't want any of the other stuff in the body that was there before. I'll leave that it's over now stuff, right? So I've just got the basic shell, and in the title I'm going to say the page that does the action from the form, and I'm going to go ahead and save that, and I'll go ahead and upload it. So this should become, second nature to you guys. Copy it, go back to the browser. I'm going to go back, try the form again. I hit submit, and nothing happens. Well, this time I didn't get an error. Why? Because the page is there, but it didn't do anything. So the question is, what do we expect this form to do? Well, we don't really know because I didn't look through the rest of the tutorial, but I would expect if I put name is Ichabod and age is 22, that I submit it, and it would say something like, yo, Ichabod, you're 22, or gee, you're old, or something like that, right? So we can go back to the tutorial, and we go down and notice when the user fills out the form, you can read the tutorial yourself, that this is the information that goes in the welcome file. So I'm going to copy this text, and bear in mind I haven't really discussed what any of this does yet, but I'm going to go ahead and put it here and save that. And let's just talk briefly about what this is doing. This is HTML, it's content because it's in black. Now we enter into PHP, we do an echo, and I'm going to clean this up so you can see exactly what's going on here. We echo, which means spit back. Then we have this variable. Notice it's uppercase, $sign starts out a variable in PHP, and then it has a bracket. And then we leave our PHP, right? So we could actually indent that. And then we have an exclamation point and a line break, and we're still in HTML now. Now we go back into PHP, we do an echo there, we finish our PHP again, and then we go back into HTML. And by the way, none of this is going to validate properly because it's not in a paragraph or anything. So welcome, into PHP, do something out of PHP, exclamation point, line break, you are, into PHP, something out of PHP, years old. So we can kind of guess, it's probably going to put your name there. It's going to say how old you are. But what is this echo? Well, we know that echo is to output, right? And the $_post is basically referring to all of the values that are encapsulated. They're sort of hidden when you submit a post. It puts an array in there. And this is referring to the part of the array called fname. And you may recall, if we go back to the first page, that the form, the input type text, the first one, had a name of fname. So here we go, fname. And then the second one is age. And here we go, age. So those are simply things we identify. We could call that X and Y. This is just a label that displays. What it's actually called, we have to decide, but then we have to refer to that on the next page. So we'll go ahead and save that, and we're going to upload it. And I'm not even sure if I should be going through this, because you can go through it on your own. But some people would prefer, watch the video and go step by step. So we're going to go to the browser and look at the page. We'll refresh to make sure we've loaded the latest copy. I'm going to put Ichabod and 22 and submit. And now notice what I get. Welcome, Ichabod. You are now 22 years old. So the question is, well, what does that give us? Well, we just know that it's being passed in the back. So I'm going to make a quick change, and you can read about this in the tutorial. I'm going to go in, and I'm going to change the method from post to get and save it. Well, what's going to happen? Well, don't know till we try it out. I'm going to move that first page up, and I'm going to load the page, go to the first page again, refresh to make sure I have the latest copy. I'll put Joe and 44 and submit. And notice what happens. My message says welcome blank, you are blank years old. In other words, it didn't break, but it didn't get the values. But now look at the URL, something changed. Last time it just said welcome PHP. Now it says question mark, fname equals Joe, and age equals 44, and that should look familiar with you. So the difference between post and get is that post is behind the page hidden, and get is in what's called the query string. The query string is this exclamation point, this question mark followed by these pairs. So it's a variable value, and they're separated by the ampersand. But notice they don't work. And the reason they don't work, if you look carefully at the code, is that we have to make the method match. So we changed method to get here, but over here we still had post. So it's a pretty easy fix. We change that to get and that to get, and now we are hopefully burning with oil, as they say. Move that over. So now we've updated both files. We go back. We're going to go ahead and try with Joe at age 44. Submit, and sure enough it says, welcome Joe, you are 44 years old. Now there's lots of other things we could do here. For example, add a year and say next year you'll be 45. And then we have to figure out what happens if you add a number to the string. Is 44 an actual number or a string? We don't know. But let's take a simple thing that would be a perfectly reasonable adaptation of this, which is to add another field. So we'll go back to first page, and we'll think, okay, what's another thing that you might often do? Well, ideally we do a drop down or radio button or whatever, but for now I'm just going to copy what's there, and let's add another field here. I'm going to hold the control key, go up, no, the shift key, go up, control C, come down, control V. Now I have two names, so I'll change this to say first name, and I'll change this to say last name. Now I have an issue because these are both called fname. So it would make sense to change fname to lname. I'm going to go ahead and clean it up in the process. I'm going to call this first name, and I'm going to call this last name. I don't really like abbreviations. They tend to cause trouble. But you do need conventions to know. This is not really a variable in PHP. This is really a variable within HTML, because notice there is no PHP here. You need the PHP to process the form. However, you do not need it to make a form, and you do not need it to submit the form. You need it to process the form. And if you're not using PHP, you need JavaScript or something in .NET or Python or what have you. And that is the page that this page calls. So we'll go ahead and save that. And since we're now sending 3 instead of sending 2, we need to receive 3. Now if we only receive 2, it'll just ignore the third one. So if I were taking my time, I would test them out one at a time, but I'm going to go ahead and add a third one. When in doubt, stick with what you know. So I'll copy this. Actually what I can do is I can combine all this. This is 2 different PHP statements. I don't really like that. So here it says echo get fname. I'm going to come down. Well, let me before I get distracted on cleaning this up, let me just copy, add another thing. Let's do echo. Let's do it under the fname. Echo $_get, and this would be a good one to memorize, just how to do this from memory. And we're going to put, remember we renamed them, so last name, semicolon, and we went fname first name. So already there's several things that could go wrong here. If the page our form is referencing is not there or is misspelled, that would fail. If we're using get instead of post or post instead of get, that would fail. If we refer to the wrong variable from the form, that would fail. And let's see. And if we have any typos, like a quote, a semicolon, whatever, we're in HTML and we should be in PHP or what have you, that should fail. So some of you who know a little bit more about code will see we're already going to have some formatting issues, but it ought to work anyway. So we're going to save this, and probably a good idea to save all, and we'll save everything here, and I need to now actually upload both of these files, right? So control, control, drag them up. Now I could just check this, check the never do again, but I kind of do it habitually because I want to make sure I don't go in the wrong direction. So now I should have the new copies. I go here, I'll reload that, and sure enough, first name, last name, and age. I could put them each on their own line or something like that. So I'll put Ichabod Vallejo 33, submit, and notice all these three fields are up at the top. It says, welcome Ichabod Vallejo, you are 33 years old. A couple things, notice there's a space before the exclamation point, and it didn't put a space in front of the two. So we could do anything you can imagine in a form. We could put, are you male, female? What is your title? Do you want to be Mr., Dr., Ms., Mrs., whatever? We could do math with the age. We could do a conditional that says, dang, you're old, or gee, you're too young to be doing this application, what have you. But this is just the gist of how a form works. And you need to be comfortable with forms, because what I'm going to ask you to do is, you remember that page we had a minute ago? This page? And you did something like that with FizzBuzz? Well, this time I'm going to have you modify FizzBuzz, so instead of 100, you're going to ask the user how many they want, so they can type in a number and it'll go through. So it was 100 by default. You're going to take that number and actually put that in instead of 100. So a simple example, we'll take age 33. What if you could change the text to say, how many FizzBuzz lines would you like, right? And then they type in a number. So let's confirm that we can do some basic math with that. I'm going to go ahead and modify the code slightly so that I say something like, next year you will be so-and-so old. What I'm going to do here is clean up the code just a little bit. So I get the age and I do an echo, but instead of doing that, what I'm going to do is set up a variable, $, and I'm going to put IAge equals. And so $, sets up a variable. I'm declaring this variable IAge. I stands for integer, and this is a protocol that I'm adopting. It's not required, but I encourage you to follow it. A is uppercase, so it's easy to read. So it puts the value into that, and then we do an echo, and we can echo $IAge to make sure it's working, right? That would just output IAge. And then we can do another thing. We'll echo, and we'll put a quote that says, I'm going to do the parentheses out of, it's good practice. I don't think they're required in PHP. I'm now forgetting. So I'll put next, right? Now you are, and then I'm going to put the dot notation, which is how we concatenate, $I age. And by the way, you can actually put this within the string if you get clever about it. So I'm going to let you research that. And then we'll put a period. Next year you will be, right? And put a space there, dot. What do? We'll put two parentheses, and we'll put $I age plus 1. We're going to hope that works. Now, a cleaner way, again, I can be really anal about code, and I encourage you to develop these anal tendencies early on, excuse my language, but be very meticulous and deliberate will help you in the long run. This creates what we call a side effect. You're doing more than one thing. Right now what we're doing is we're doing math inside concatenation, inside an echo. That's three things at once. And if we want to be really conservative, clean coders, we generally don't do that. And there will be people who disagree with me on this. But I would suggest that one way we do this is we say $I next age equals $I age plus plus, right? And plus plus, when you add it to any variable, adds 1. Or you could do I age equals $I age plus 1. Those are exactly the same. So I can put a note to that effect. Same as $I age plus plus. Plus plus and minus minus are really quite common within code. You'll see your loop before you did plus plus to increment it, right? So I prefer plus plus, but this one is actually clearer if you aren't familiar with that convention. And I did it wrong there. It's I age, yeah, next age equals I age plus 1, right? So In fact, that's cleaner than plus plus, because plus plus would actually change age by 1. In this case, we don't want to do it. We want to take that and add 1. So this is a cleaner way. So we'll go do that, and so instead of putting the iAge here, we'll put $i next age, right? And then since we want to be clean and end with a period, we do that. So now we're simply concatenating a bunch of strings. So let's see what happens. And so you can imagine by extension we've set up a variable that takes a number. We can do some math with a number. This number, you could say how many times you want FizzBuzz to run, and so you'd take the number and call it something like number desired or fizz count or something like that, and then that would become your counter in your loop. So if they said 0, you'd do 0. If they said 3,000, you'd have a really long web page. And then ask yourself what would happen if you put a negative number, or what if you put in something that's not a number. So I'm going to let you sort some of that out. So I'm going to save it. I haven't changed the other page, I just changed what I did with that age. So I'll go ahead and upload the welcome. Get my mouse trouble here. I'll copy that and go back to the browser, and I'm going to just resubmit this. And notice what happens. You're 33 right now, you are 33. Wait, you are 33. Right now you are 33. Next year you'll be 34 years old. So a couple things. There's a period after 34 that I didn't want, and I duplicated. It says you are 33, and then again you are :33. So I should probably just clean that up. So I don't actually need to echo age there. I don't even need this UR or any of that stuff. So I can get rid of this. And since I don't have any more HTML in there, I can just get rid of the closed PHP and the open, and then I just stay in PHP. And if I wanted to do a new line, I could do it like this. I could actually put HTML in there, and I would do it like so. So that's the way to output in there. So I don't like echoing right out of the get. I prefer to assign the get to a variable. So for example, I'll choose, I'll put $s first name equals, right? It's a two-step process. And then I'll put echo $s first, s first name, right? And then I repeat that. Or I might do them together. So I'll put $s last name equals, and then I'll put both of these after each other to be sequential, and then I can echo first name dot space dot $s last name, right? So now I have one echo statement, and if I know I want a line break there, I could just keep concatenating and put my line break like that. And if I'm going too fast, you got to slow this down and watch it at a speed that you're comfortable with, or be typing along with me. So I get the first name, I get the last name, and then I echo, and then I'd like to go ahead and add some more statement, like I'll put a greeting, $s greeting equals hello there, comma, and then semicolon, and I'll put echo $s greeting dot s first name space last name, and then maybe I'll even put the exclamation point there, right? So I may even want to get all these together. So I'm going to go get all my variables, my first name, my last name, my age, and then I'm going to create a greeting, and then I'm going to echo that stuff. I don't need to echo this because I'm using it before. I can change my notes and say something like add a year for next year, and you don't really need that if your variables are clean. So notice how next age, I could even say next year's age, right? Next year's age is age plus 1, and I'll change the variable to match year's age. And now I'm at a point where I made quite a few changes. I think it's cleaner, but it's possible I could have missed a semicolon or a quote or anything along the way. So it's good to check, and if you're nervous or tentative, do one change at a time and make sure you didn't muck a bunch of things up. Remember, there's quite a few things I could mess up. The variables have to match exactly letter for letter. So I highlight S greeting. Notice that it's there and there. I highlight S first name. Notice that it's there and there. There's last name. Good. There's I age, and I age is used twice. Right now you are such and such. I'll get rid of that extra space with a colon. I don't even think I need the colon. Right now you are so and so, and I'll put years old. Next year you will be, right? And I could even put a little more HTML in there, BR, and I'm not using a quote because I'm already in a string. So now we can save that and see what happens with it. I'll upload that. Go back and try the page out. And in this case, since the values are already up in the query string there, all I really have to do is refresh and it'll run the PHP code again. I don't even have to resubmit the form. So, welcome, hello there, whoops, so the welcome is overkill. Hello there, Ichabod Vallejo, right now you're 33 years old, next year you'll be 34 years old. So I still have that dangling period there. I need to get rid of the welcome, so I make a note to myself. Okay, I don't need the welcome. And next year you will be, next year's age. I don't quite follow why. Oh, here it is. I have the period and then I have years old down here. So next year's age, next year you will be blah 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 years old. And I'm going to get rid of this year's old. And now I should be good to go. So you get the idea. So now there's one other thing. How do I get it so I don't actually have two pages? I don't have the first page and the welcome. I actually want the form to call itself. I want all this code to be on the first page. So my action would just be, let me show you what happens. I'm going to go to action, and instead of calling welcome.php, I'm just going to put quote quote, which means it's going to call itself. It would be like putting first page. And now I've effectively broken it, but let's at least see what happens. I'm going to upload the file. And since I made those other changes, I'll upload them anyway. And I'm going to go back to first page, a refresh to make sure I have the latest copy. And I'll put Joe Billy 22 and submit. And notice the values are moved up there. If we'd done post, it would be hidden, but there's nothing on this page to actually process it. So let's try this. I'm going to actually go into my code, and I'm going to take all that code from the welcome page, all that PHP from there to there, Control C, go back to my first page, and just for kicks, I'm going to put it right here under my form. And remember, I was HTML there, now I'm PHP, and here's that other PHP. I could just get rid of these two. I'm going to leave them for now because they're kind of two separate things. This is all that, the for loop that I don't really need. I'm going to change that 100 down to 10, just so it doesn't take so long, or that it's not taking up my real estate. So let's see what happens now when we upload this and try and run it. Now we're just working with one page. Remember, this is all about dealing with forms, and it can get a little more complicated than you expect. I don't know how much more I'll get into that because this video is plenty long now. So I'll refresh, and notice what happens is it says, hello there, Joe Billy, you're now 22 years old. Next year you'll be 23 years old. So the code is actually working on the same page. I refresh it, and it stays there. I can even go up here and change this number to 222 and hit enter, and look what happens, 223. And notice it also resets. So if I go in there and say Sally Jones, age 23, submit, hello there, Sally Jones. So not only is it resetting the form, but it's actually functioning. So this is actually not too bad. One word of caution, imagine this were a transaction system like you just ordered something from Amazon. Well, what that means is when you hit refresh, it would run again and again and again, and you just ordered 5 items instead of the one you wanted. But really it works pretty well right now. So you can imagine all we have to do is replace the variable there that says how many FizzBuzz items we want, and you're good. So this is forms. This is one page processing a form on itself. They're both PHP now, because if this were just HTML, it couldn't do the processing. And what I'm going to ask you to do is not only FizzBuzz, but I want to have a couple other separate forms. And if you wanted separate forms, what you actually do is take the form itself and you can just make a totally new form and put it under. You don't put them in the same tags. And you could actually have 5 forms and each one points to 5 different pages. What we're going to try and do is process them on the same page in separate sections. So what else can we do? You're going to ask, how many FizzBuzz counts would you like? And do that, and you're going to use the example you already built, make a copy of it, because you all have unique words and things. So what else can we do? I think probably a useful one is contact information, right? So come up with your theme or your idea, like somebody had cookies and someone had bike repair shop and so on. And think about what a normal contact page would have. We've got first name, last name, street address 1, street address 2, zip code, city, and maybe a phone number. So let's get like a good 5-10 fields, maybe a radio button, bullet list, the kind of things that you would normally use if you were, say, doing a club membership or what have you. And be very careful about your variable naming conventions. And for now, let's just leave it that all we want to do is output that back to the screen. So you type in all that contact information, you hit submit, and it comes back in and says your first name is this, your last name is that, your street address is this, and spend a little bit of time, clean variable names. I don't really care if you use get or post so long as it works, but get is easier to debug and troubleshoot. In fact, let's go ahead and do this. Let's do it both ways. Once you get one working well, do the other. So do a get and then do a post under that. So we're going to have 3 forms on one page. One of them is to do the count for FizzBuzz. The other is contact submission that goes to get, and then the exact same thing, only it goes to post. So you'll just be copying and pasting that code. But of course your PHP will be a little bit different. So that ought to be enough to keep you busy. I'll write it up, but you can make notes from this as well. I'm almost at 33 minutes. Hopefully less because maybe it didn't record the break. But keep questions coming. So far, very happy with the stuff I've looked at. And come up with that theme and sort of follow it along as you go.